House of Cards is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
You're listening to House of Cards.
Today, the game is different.
I want to gamble. Gambling is a very serious business. Is that clear?
Welcome to House of Cards. Dave Weishautel with you here, deep from the swamps of Jersey. Got a great show coming up for you. When it comes to the gambling industry, news is breaking all around the country. One gaming market that's been in the news lately is Illinois. To fill us in on what's going on in the land of Lincoln, we're going to be talking with Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective. From sports betting to horse racing, we're going to cover the Illinois gambling scene. So stick around. We'll be right back with House of Cards.
Money matters. Money always matters. If you owe thousands in back taxes to the IRS, how much can Tax Solutions Now save you?
I paid less than I owe.
That's right, money matters. So call Tax Solutions Now and get the IRS off your back. Since 2014, Tax Solutions Now has been a leader in the tax resolution industry. That's why we say money matters. Remove wage garnishments, property liens, fines, and penalties. Qualify for the Fresh Start program or even uncollectible status. Money matters. How much can Tax Solutions Now save you?
I owed the IRS over $10,000. I paid a fraction of what I owed.
Call now to reduce or even eliminate your back taxes.
We were being audited. We couldn't sleep. We called Tax Solutions Now.
I called Tax Solutions Now and got the IRS off my back. Thanks. You saved us a ton of money.
Money matters. How much can Tax Solutions Now save you? Call now and find out.
Call 800-297-9788. 800-297-9788.
Psst. Yeah, you. Come here. Haven't you heard? We don't need to hide anymore.
Now, we can shop privately for adult products at adamandeve.com. They've got massage oils, lingerie, and lots more we can't mention here. Use offer code SPICE404. They'll give you 50% off almost any one item, 3 free DVDs, free mystery gift, and free shipping. That's 50% off, free shipping, and more. Private shopping starts at adamandeve.com.
You're listening to the House of Cards.
Night, not thrilling, but night.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishautel with you. House of Cards is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with Drizzly.com. Lots of news stories about gambling are coming in from all around the country, and one of the big gaming markets that's in the news right now is Illinois. One reporter who is required reading for us here at the radio show is Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective. And to fill us in on what's going on in the land of Lincoln is Chris Altruda, who's on the line right now. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Chris, before we get started, can you give us a rundown of what's going on and what's open or shut down in Illinois? I know I'm sitting here in New Jersey, and as we speak, our casinos are still closed until probably July 2nd. Our racetracks recently opened. I know Pennsylvania is opening slowly. What's open and closed in terms of gambling in Illinois?
Okay, so right now the 3 tracks in Illinois, Fairmount, Hawthorne, and Arlington Park, are all technically open with spectatorless racing. Arlington Park just signed a deal with the jockeys here, and their live racing schedule is slated to start July 23rd. The casinos are apparently not going to reopen as part of Phase 4 in Restore, Illinois. There was no mention of it when Governor Pritzker moved the state into Phase 4. So it's possible that, I believe, Phase 5, the earliest that it could be open there is July 23rd. Whether or not there is something in the interim is yet to be seen. The casinos do have a set of protocols from the gaming board that they are trying to fulfill. And the only thing that is technically open is the Bet Rivers sporting app through Rivers Casino for sports betting.
Is there anything,
and gaming.
What's the latest coming from the governor or state officials? Are they giving any concrete plans on dates or any benchmarks they have to hit before casinos opening? Anything coming from state officials?
There really hasn't been much in the way of it. At the same time, Governor Pritzker has been very deliberate in his reopening process. I mean, they just reached Phase 4, which for the city included indoor dining at a capacity of 25%. It has been a very slow process. It's to the point where some people have complained about the pace of it, but it seems to be going at the pace that the governor wants, and based on the various levels in terms of positive testing rates and testing and just cases in general, his approach appears to be being borne out by what seems to be a positive track right now.
You know, you mentioned racetracks, and I want to start with them, specifically one racetrack. And let me tell you something. Before I read your articles in SportsHandle, I thought there could be no worse negotiating a contract than Major League Baseball and owners and players. And then I read about Arlington Park and the state's Thoroughbred Association. Before we get into the interesting contract negotiations between the parties, can you give us a little background about how Arlington Park and the Thoroughbred Association got to the point they got to?
Well, a large part of this comes from the fact that Arlington Park is owned by Churchill Downs. And Churchill Downs had long been on the bandwagon when for an expansion of gambling in the state in general, in addition to sports betting. They had wanted to turn Arlington Park into a casino, and that was a constant drumbeat for them as lobbying this expansion plan that Governor Pritzker signed into law last year. So after he signed it into law last June, 2 months later, Churchill Downs comes out and says they are not going to pursue the Racino license, citing the high tax rate. That instantly incurred the wrath of the ITHA, which is the Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association here. And they have, while not publicly been at each other's throats, there is a simmering level of contention between the two sides. And one of the conditions that came with that capital expansion bill was that the two sides had to have a signed deal in place by January 1st. And it never came to fruition. So they continued to negotiate. And then you had COVID, and then they continued to negotiate. And by the time this month rolled around, it appeared that they had reached agreement on 99.99% of the items that were being negotiated, one of which being the overnight purse sizes. Then the talks broke down, and the board recessed for 2 weeks. thinking that, that would be enough time. They negotiated over the weekend after the first recess. And again, there were incremental steps of progress. So last Thursday, they were supposed to have a deal in place, and there was a late breakdown. Another recess, go to Friday. And this is where it got, where it just like ratcheted up into like, the unbelieving territory, is that the meeting started at 1. And they said, commissioner said that, everything was in place for an agreement. The Arlington Park president, Tony Petrillo, mentioned that, we've done everything, this is the deal, and so on and so forth. And ITHA executive director David McCaffrey sounded completely blindsided by the fact that he was told there was an agreement in place, to the point where he said he did not get the email of the latest contract until 8 minutes into the meeting.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
Credit card debt can ruin your life. If you owe $10,000 and minimum payments are siphoning away your paycheck each month, you can get debt-free in less time than you think.
I've paid $800 a month for the past 3 years and haven't changed the balance on my credit card.
Get debt-free now has a program to reduce your debt, stop the harassing phone calls, avoid financial ruin, and settle for less than you owe.
I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
You're pre-approved for our special hardship program if you owe $10,000 or more. Upon payment of your new lower balance, your debt will finally shrink until you are debt-free.
My family no longer has 30 years of payments ahead of us at 20% interest.
There's no fees until you see results. So call now, make one monthly program payment, and free up your cash. Resolve your debt.
Call 800-515-1558. 800-515-1558.
You're listening to House of Cards.
Where was the house? Where was the House of Cards?
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishottle with you. House of Cards is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective. Sorry about that. Radio has to do its business, Why don't you continue what you were saying before the break?
And it was just, from there, it was just, well, I can't obviously sign this because I haven't seen it. So they go to recess again for 2.5 hours. They come back. Obviously, the ITHA has no interest in signing this until they look over everything. And there's talk of multiple contracts that were being sent over, none of which matched. So they recess over the weekend. And then, so Monday morning rolls around, and they finally have this deal, which, and everybody's, starting to feel good about themselves, patting themselves on the back that they agree to this. And then, because they're fixing the race schedule for the Dark Host days and the live racing schedule, then Hawthorne jumps in, asking for a consideration of the reallocation of the Dark Host days because they've been probably the most impacted by the pandemic in terms of the fact they only had 4 Dark Host days. They had their live racing, but they had all the horses on their backstretch for 3 months while Arlington Park was completely shut down because of the pandemic. And Arlington, as is their right, sought to enforce the legality of the contract that was signed before everything happened, which, again, is their right. It doesn't look good from a PR standpoint, but it's understandable. So as they were going back, so Tony Petrillo and John Walsh, who's the assistant general manager of Hawthorne, were going back and forth. And it sounded like Hawthorne was making a reasonable request. They didn't want all of the Dark Horse days. They asked for 15 of them, which would have probably, Walsh estimated that would have been about $200,000, which would have covered almost 1 month of the cost of having all those horses on the backstretch. Mm-hmm. Again, Arlington, stuck and twisted and, kind of held their ground. They went to recess again. They came back. Arlington brought its major counsel in. They had one counsel in before the recess. The main counsel came in and also tried to stress the legality of agreements. And then also almost tweaking the IRB, said that the IRB had no statutory authority to change the agreement, to which the IRB, IRB counsel completely came back and said, yes, we do. It's in the Horse Racing Act. At the end of the day, Arlington got the Dark Horse days ahead of their live racing schedule, but it was interesting the fact that it wasn't a unanimous vote, and the person who cast the dissenting vote was Commissioner Thomas McCauley, who was essentially the person who held the hands of Arlington and the ITHA throughout the negotiating process to get them over the finish line. So it's really been a nonstop adventure for the past 2 months, and while you're going to have a simmering of sorts, the next meeting will be entertaining because it could be an entirely new look Illinois Racing Board. There are two commissioners, Daniel Beiser and Arlene Mulder, whose terms expire. And there are two vacant positions whose terms expire. Like all four of those positions, the term expires on July 1st. There's been nothing from the governor's office regarding who potential replacements are. They actually had to find someone a couple months ago just to get a quorum of 6. There's supposed to be 11 on the board, and they only have 6 right now. And on top of that, the current makeup in terms of political party is 5 Democrat and 1 Republican, and you can have no more than 6 of either party on the board. So it is a constant state of flux, and by the time we get to either September or October, when the next race dates for the 2021 season are held, that's going to be a very contentious hearing because the commissioners have already said that they're going to remember that what all the things Hawthorne did to help, and Churchill Downs is not committed to racing at Arlington beyond 2021. So it will be, in some respects, a free-for-all at that racing dates meeting.
I gotta say,
in September or October.
Reading about it, it's been an unbelievable process that they've been going through. I mean, with this contract in place, has there been? What I'm asking is the virus that we just went through, and I know there's talk about a second wave coming through. Has there been any contractual clauses put in place for the racing industry in this contract with regard to the coronavirus and how that affects racing going forward?
I think with the racing dates hearing, I think that's going to be a point of contention whether or not a force majeure clause will be inserted. I think that was one point that led to the late breakdown Friday between the ITHA and Arlington. There were 2 outstanding issues by the time Friday rolled around. One was arbitration on the purse sizes, but that also seemed to have a very straightforward solution in the sense that if the 2 sides presented their numbers and they were close enough, they were just going to average it down the middle. And if they were far apart enough, they would have had a third party, and the third party in that case would have been the IRB director of mutuals, Mike Belmonte, and everyone seemed on board with that. The second issue was, and I have to find this one because it also related to some principle, the force majeure provision that would greatly affect the outcome of the purse sizes, and the ITHA had been that was one of the first sticking points of negotiations because they originally asked for $200,000 per day in the overnight purses, and the eventual number that they settled on was $150,000 for next year and $130,000 for this year.
What is the next big date we should be looking for with regard to Illinois racing for next year? I mean, when is this? Okay, it seems like it's so unsettled right now. When are we going to see what Illinois racing will look like in the future?
That's a really good question because right now the bigger news is what's going on off the track in the sense that all three of them have applied for sports betting licenses, and in the case of Hawthorne and Fairmount, they're also applying for the Racino licenses, which Arlington didn't. So at some point during this year, the expectation is the Illinois Gaming Board will hear all three sports betting application licenses and approve, 1, 2, or 3 of them to kind of expand sports betting here. As for next year, because one of the negotiating points that came out was that Arlington Park dropped their stakes races for this year, which is the Arlington Million, which is kind of well known, and the Beverly D, but in 2021 they will be back. I am not well versed in the Hawthorne and Fairmount schedules, so I'm not exactly sure what is big in terms of harness racing, but those 2 Grade 1 stakes races usually stand out in terms of horse racing here.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side. The weather is getting nicer here in Jersey, so grab your tablet and your cell and bring Party Poker with you. Why go to Atlantic City or Pennsylvania? Pay for gas, pay for parking, fight the crowds. You can play the same games online anywhere in the Garden State. If you're 21 and in New Jersey, go to nj.partypoker.com and sign up using promo code EXIT7A. You'll even get a first deposit match up to $1,000. Start playing and start winning some cash. Use promo code EXIT7A for great online poker action plus some bonus money with Party Poker at nj.partypoker.com. Stick around. We'll be right back with more House of Cards.
I love getting my kids ready and driving them to school.
But a careless driver can change your life in an instant. And insurance companies want to settle on the cheap. Auto Accident Help Desk connects victims with powerful lawyers. They fight for you.
I called Auto Accident Help Desk and got help for my pain and suffering.
Don't let an insurance company take advantage of you. Our attorneys fight and beat big insurance every day. If you've been injured in an automobile accident in the last 6 months, you owe it to yourself to make this free call with no obligation.
When I called, they asked me a few questions and matched me with a powerful lawyer who knew how to fight for me.
Call now. We're available 24/7 to help you get the money you deserve for your pain and suffering.
They got me way more than the insurance company offered.
Auto Accident Help Desk helps accident victims like you every day.
Call 800-613-4611. 800-613-4611. 800-613-4611.
Hey, this is Dave Weishuttle from House of Cards with your House of Cards Gaming Report for the week of June 29th, 2020. The U.S. casino industry would like to see cashless transactions on their properties due to the current outbreak of coronavirus. Last week, the American Gaming Association called on regulators in states with casinos to update the rules and regulations for cashless options for customers. Presently, there are only a few casinos that allow cashless payments using credit card or debit cards, as well as through apps like PayPal and Google Pay. Well, as quickly as they reopen, 3 casinos in Arizona have shut down because of coronavirus. Gila River Gaming shut down their properties, Lone Butte, Wild Horse Pass, and V Kiva due to the sudden spike of the virus in the state. According to the local ABC affiliate in the area, a security guard who worked for Lone Butte died on June 11th due to coronavirus. And finally, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has given the okay for Atlantic City casinos to reopen. The casinos will be allowed to reopen on July 2nd, but will have to be limited to 25% capacity. The governor's announcement came 2 weeks before the scheduled reopening in order to give the casinos time to hire and train casino personnel and to equip the properties with the proper safety measures. Have any news or tips regarding casinos, gaming, or legislation? Send us an email at newsroom@houseofcardsradio.com and follow us on Twitter at HOC Radio.
You're listening to House of Cards.
I'll bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day. No way. I'll give you 3-1 odds. Nope. 5-1. Nope. 10-1. You're after.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishuttle with you. House of Cards is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective. Well, you mentioned it, and the other big story coming out of Illinois is that they've gone live with mobile sports betting. I mean, before we get into specifics of the launch, can you fill us in on how Illinois got to that point? Was there opposition for Illinois going online, or, was that the plan all along?
There wasn't as much opposition to Illinois going online as it was preventing FanDuel and DraftKings from going online online to set the market with everyone else. This goes back to 2015 during what you would call the outlaw period of daily fantasy sports, and both FanDuel and DraftKings were operating DFS sites with no legal ruling in the state as to whether or not it was legal. Eventually, the Attorney General, Lisa Madigan, who, for those who don't live in Illinois, is the daughter of Michael Madigan, the Democratic House Speaker, who is an institution in the state in terms of politics, ruled that DFS was illegal. So as the negotiations for legalizing sports betting were going on, Neil Bloom, who runs Rush Street Interactive and Rivers Casino, was lobbying very hard for some sort of ban against FanDuel and DraftKings. He originally wanted them out of the market in terms of an online-only license for 3 years. And it got contentious to the point where the two sides were taking out commercial airtime in the Chicago market, ripping each other.
Really?
So eventually Pritzker had to step in there, and they eventually negotiated what is, as part of the law, a 540-day waiting period from an online-only operator could not apply for a sports betting license until 540 days until after the first master sports wagering license was issued. So as the Illinois Gaming Board was moving forward with the applications, everyone was getting a temporary operating permit. They weren't being licensed per se, and by the time March rolled around, Rivers Casino and the Argosy and Alton had been given provisionary approval to accept wagers, but still had the temporary operating permit. So that clock never started. So then you have COVID, which, shut down everything. And then approximately 3 weeks ago, Governor Pritzker issued an executive order waiving the in-person registration provision to have a mobile sports betting app. And so everyone, started, putting the clock on, when is it going to be available? When's it going to be available? Who's going to have it available? And it was always going to be Bet Rivers to be first to market based on the fact that Rivers Casino was the first to market for live sports betting. And it was just, everything was in line in terms of the supplier license and management license and so on and so forth. So as everyone was waiting for Rivers to go live mobile, the Illinois Gaming Board finally got around to issuing licenses for all 7 casinos that had permits at that point. So now the clock started on that. Now the other half of the equation is that FanDuel and DraftKings are not really interested in waiting around for 18 months, which becomes 21 months when you factor in the application period. Mm-hmm. So FanDuel has reportedly been in talks to buy Fairmount Park and then, essentially, skirt the 540-day provision by having a retail book at the track. No one seems to know where DraftKings is going to wind up in this state, but DraftKings does have a management services provider temporary permit.
Okay.
So of the 7 casinos, it was possible that they had links to 2 through Caesars. They had links to a third through IGT, but they have been very quiet on, a possible landing place here. So that's been kind of the Palace intrigue. And on the 18th, Rivers went live with Bet Rivers in their mobile app, and right now that is the only one that is active. although the expectation is that the Argosy will be next because they were provisionally approved to accept wagers before the pandemic.
Now, with regard to Bet Rivers, how did the launch go, and were there any problems that were reported after it launched?
The launch went fairly smoothly. I mean, I have it on my system. I admittedly am somewhat, I won't say I'm the most technically savvy person, and as someone who has like a rewards member card, I think I hand-fisted something when I was applying to get it myself. So, customer service person walked me through it. Everything, as far as I know, has gone fairly smoothly. One of my friends who lives along the Illinois-Wisconsin border has had some issues with geolocation because he's literally feet from the state line.
Okay.
So I think as the geolocation continues to gather information, I think that problem works itself out. But as far as I haven't seen anything regarding problems in terms of launch. The lines seem fairly reasonable as an only market in right now. I remember when they opened in March, there were a couple people grousing that some of the lines were minus 117 and minus 118. But I mean, that's, I think you're going to get that initial grousing when you're the only act in town.
Yeah.
But right now, as far as I can tell, everything seems to be going well in terms of the Bet Rivers, in terms of the mobile app and people using it.
Well, it's going well for you because you just hit on soccer.
Yes, I had a nice double today. I had Everton winning straight up, and I had a nice parlay of Wolverhampton winning and Raul Jimenez scoring a goal, and everything came up roses today. So I am pleased.
That's why you're a great reporter. You do this for research. So it's
exactly
what has to be done. But how many platforms does Illinois plan on having? I mean, it's I know Rivers is the first one, and they were the first retail and the first online. How many do you plan on having, and when do you think they're going to be rolled out?
One of the other upshots of the last Illinois Gaming Board meeting was that they gave their administrator, Marcus Fruchter, more power. And one of the caveats of the more centralized powers was that it involves only the pre-existing casinos that are only the casinos that were given licenses. So essentially all 7 casinos that got the licenses are going to be the casinos that Fruchter would work on to get them moving towards having mobile sports betting available. And this market is going to be interesting to watch, especially the longer FanDuel and DraftKings are not in it, because PointsBet has an agreement in place with Hawthorne, and there are various other ones. We think that BetMGM will be in here at some point, and but of all those potential mobile sports betting providers, none of them have the clout, so to speak, that FanDuel and DraftKings have. So as a result, you're going to have all these betting platforms that are essentially like on equal footing, establishing themselves, establishing a beachhead in the state. And then when FanDuel and DraftKings come into the fray, it will be a battle, it will be the battle for hearts and wallets, so to speak, across the state when the two behemoths enter.
Other than acquiring actual physical properties, like you said, FanDuel was looking at the racetrack. I mean, do they have any recourse with regard, using the court system, like filing documents saying, this is unfair treatment, or have they explored that?
To my knowledge, no, but I think at the same time, because the market was trying, it's still a slow-moving market in terms of coming to life. I mean, when the pandemic rolled around, Rivers was operational for 6 days in terms of sports betting, and the Argosy was planning to open on the 16th, which I think is the actual day Governor Pritzker ordered the casinos to shut down. So they haven't really missed much per se. The bigger issue for them was waiting for the licenses to be issued. That might have been the part that winds up, causing the most damage, so to speak, because that clock didn't move until 2 weeks ago. But I have not heard of any legal recourse. And when we originally moved the story that Rivers was going live, FanDuel at least did not seem overly upset that Rivers was going to be first to market. So read into that what you will.
You mentioned it before. Illinois has the requirement that you have to finish your online registration at the physical sports book, but, they said by governor order that they suspended that. Once the pandemic is over and once that's lifted, do you think Illinois will go back to the requirement that once you start the registration for your mobile sportsbook, you have to finish your registration at the physical sportsbook?
No, I think if you have the account, you have the account. I think that's a genie you can't put in the back. I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle without major legal recourse. I think one of the other things, and it was actually a well-written executive order in the sense that, the provision is suspended as long as the gubernatorial proclamations are in place. And also on the Illinois Gaming Board being on board with giving Marcus Fruchter the expanded powers is that clause extends to him for 60 days beyond the proclamation of disasters, or I forget the exact wording of it, but it's 60 days after the gubernatorial proclamations of disaster. So there is some hand-in-hand work here to expand the mobile betting market here. It's now a question of the Illinois Gaming Board getting those casinos up and running, or at least approving the licenses to have the casinos themselves up and running for mobile sports betting.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side.
Haven't you heard? We don't need to hide anymore.
Now, we can shop privately for adult products at adamandeve.com. They've got massage oils, lingerie, and lots more we can't mention here. Use offer code SPICE404. They'll give you 50% off almost any one item, 3 free DVDs, free mystery gift, and free shipping. That's 50% off, free shipping, and more. Private shopping starts at adamandeve.com.
We like to think that we live in a nice, safe neighborhood. The truth is that a burglary occurs every 13 seconds, and homes without a security system have a 300% greater chance of getting broken into. How many homes in your neighborhood were robbed yesterday? You need to start protecting your home and family today. Call now to get state-of-the-art protection. To keep your family and property safe, call the number on your screen now. Representatives are standing by to assist you.
You're listening to House of Cards. Check out our website at houseofcardsradio.com.
Welcome back to House of Cards. Dave Weishaupt with you. For those of you just joining us, I am talking with Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective. You know, it looks like Major League Baseball is going to start in late July. I know these sports books love these benchmarks of when they want to open and go live with their mobile sports betting apps. Do you think because Major League Baseball announced late July, are we going to see a flurry from mobile sports betting apps in Illinois to go live before Major League Baseball starts?
I think that is the proper course of action to take. Whether or not it gets there, of course, is another matter. But again, going back to that extension of powers given Marcus Fruchter. The next meeting is scheduled for July 30th. And while the Illinois Gaming Board doesn't have to wait until issuing those licenses, it wouldn't be surprising if more than one or more of those casinos are licensed to operate mobile sports betting books. Because right now there are 5 total management services provider licenses that have been granted. Like, for example, the Grand Victoria Casino in Elgin has everything in place. They're just waiting for the okay. There are just a few places that have everything in place. It's just a question of getting some of the T's crossed and the I's dotted to have supplier licenses and management services provider licenses. And from there, it should be, in theory, easy to move these forward and be live. Some kicking around ideas is that Hawthorne, which has a deal with PointsBet, could be one of those tracks that's up and running at the July 30th meeting, because it seems more likely that the horse tracks will have their applications approved or denied at that meeting. It just makes sense from a logistical point of view, if that makes sense, in terms of what Marcus Fruchter has to do with the existing casinos, and he can work on the casinos, do what he has to there, and then turn his attention to the racetracks, and then get those approvals moving forward at a pace as well.
Mobile sports betting has been live for only a couple of days in Illinois. How has the response been? Are people generally happy? I mean, it's tough to tell in a pandemic when not a lot of sports are going on, but are the officials generally happy? I hate to see turnout, but the response by customers to the mobile apps and has betting been brisk?
It appears it has been brisk, and like the first weekend, Bet Rivers didn't release like specific handle figures, but they did notice that the RBC tournament had 22% of the handle. Soccer was doing well. The UFC fight card did well. So people are definitely attuned to betting. They have been waiting for this app to go mobile, and they've jumped on it. I think there's a definite appetite here, and I think one of the other things is that in the Chicago area, it's a very short drive to Indiana, which had remote registration from day one, and everyone, it's a very short car drive to just go over the state line, arguably make your bet and then turn around and go home. So that's going to be, keeping those bettors in state is going to be a huge boost for Rivers as the only one currently operating. Now, whether or not, I don't know what kind of percentage that Indiana handle gets from people who drive over the border, because there are 2 casinos literally a half hour away from me here on the north side of Chicago. I don't know, what the exact percentages of people who go over, make that bet and come back, but it was noticeable because I went to both casinos when Indiana reopened on the 15th, and there were lines out the door. I mean, and we're talking 50% capacity, and people were waiting to get in. There's definitely an appetite for, sports betting specifically, but also gambling in general in Illinois. And, as you move forward and the state moves closer to phase 5, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
How important was it for Bet Rivers to be first? I remember here in New Jersey where there was a mad dash just to get online first, and DraftKings was number one in our market for a long time until being overtaken by FanDuel. How important was it for Bet Rivers to be first in the market?
It matters. It especially matters here, I think, because FanDuel and DraftKings, as of right now, don't have dirt in terms of, a retail presence. So to get online first and establish a beachhead, and I think that's going to prove true for all of the casinos that have a retail presence that want to have a mobile sports book as well. Because when they enter, it's, obvious in every state, when they enter the state, they suck up a lot of the oxygen. There's no arguing that point. So for Bet Rivers to get in first and establish it, and every day they're the only act in town, it's going to help them. Now, I mean, are they going to, command, 50% of the market? No. Not by the time Bet Rivers, by the time FanDuel and DraftKings roll into this market, it would not be surprising to see Bet Rivers have a dominant market share among those 5 or 6 peers, so to speak. But to hold on to, I think even 20% when DraftKings and FanDuel are up and running in this state, maybe 6 months, 9 months down the road, that could be, the target based on just the power that DraftKings and FanDuel carry with the names behind it.
Chris, we're running out of time, but can you give out your website and your social media address so people can follow you and read the articles you're writing?
Sure. Website is sportshandle.com. We also do usbets.com. And my Twitter handle is ALTRUDA73 at Altruda73.
Chris Altruda from SportsHandle.com and Better Collective, thanks for coming on and filling us in on what's going on in the great state of Illinois. Nonstop news is coming out of that state, so thanks a lot for keeping us up to date.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. I'll see you next time on House of Cards.